Dear God, today as the session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. If you please honor our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Madonza.
Here.
Councilor Mercia.
Here.
Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Councilor Norn. Here. Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Leahy.
Here.
Councilor Laurie.
Here.
8 present.
Thank you. At this time, I'd recognize Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence and darken chamber for William J. Moriarty, a member of a well-known Greater Lowell family. William attended St. Patrick's Grammar School and was a graduate of Lowell High School class of 1949. He then went on to attend the Lowell Technological Institute. He was a veteran of the Korean War and proudly served his country in the United States Air Force. He was a past chairman of the United Way Fund at the John Hancock in Boston, where he worked for over 30 years. He had been a member for over 50 years at Mount Pleasant Golf Course and was involved in a number of local organizations. He was a member of the board of directors at the Lowell House. In addition, Bill was a corporator of Lowell General Hospital, where he took an active role in fundraising for Lowell General Cancer Care Teamwork for many years. Bill was married to the late Muriel Moriarty and the proud father of 5 sons, James, John, Bob, Brian, and Dennis, and 2 daughters, Janet and Ellen, 9 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandchild. We offer our sympathy to his family, relatives, and many friends. He will be truly missed, and if you can just allow me to do one more, I'd like to offer a moment of silence and darken chamber for Dr. Luke Caveney, a resident of Lowell, husband of Katie Caveney. Luke attended Lowell schools. He was a graduate of Lowell High School class of 1994, where he had been a standout athlete on the wrestling team. He was a graduate of UMass Lowell class of 1998. He furthered his education attending Life Chiropractic College in California, graduating in 2002, and also attended Carrick Institute of Neurology of California, also graduating in 2002. Dr. Luke started his chiropractic practice, Caveney Chiropractic Neurology, in Lowell in June of 2003, and as the former mayor at the time, I attended his grand opening, and I was extremely proud of him as a new doctor opening up a practice in the city of Lowell. He was a member of the Lowell Firefighters Club, the Lowell Elks, and the Lafayette Club. Besides his beloved wife, Katie, he leaves behind his mother, Ida, 1 brother, and 2 sisters. He will be truly missed, and we offer our sympathy to his family, relatives, and many friends. Thank you for allowing me to say this.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to offer a moment of silence and darken chambers for William Bill Fury. Bill was a lifelong resident of the city of Lowell. He's survived by his wife, Helen, his children, Evan Fury Patterson and her husband, Aaron, Weston Lynn Snow of Lowell, and William Fury and Lindsay Turner of Lowell also, plus grandchildren and his sister. Bill was a graduate of Lowell High. He went into the United States Army, and where he served in the military, and he was a member of the Ancient Order of Hibernians, the Old Scouts, Duval Manor Men's Club, Long Meadow Golf Clubs, and the Elks. And may he rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd all please rise in a moment of silence and darken chambers for these and everyone who's passed since the last meeting. May they rest in peace. Councilor Elliott?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to request a suspension of the rules, and the purpose of the suspension of the rules is to express my concern with the Demulas and the market basket issue.
Second.
Well, I'm not sure that that's really in order, given that it's really not on the agenda.
That's why I asked for suspension of the rules.
Well, you're really not allowed to suspend the rules.
The motion was made and was seconded. I'd like to bring up
I understand
issues
that.
and concerns, Mr. Mayor, on the market basket issue.
I understand that, but a motion to suspend the rules does not overrule state law, which requires that we have posted in our meeting notices what's to be discussed on any given day.
On any given day, there are numerous motions to suspend the rules to bring items that are not on the agenda, and we do it regularly, and I think it's imperative and important to do this.
Well, the test that we,
Motion was made and seconded, so
I
after
understand,
that,
I
there's
understand
debate.
that.
We
But
can have some
the
debate.
test that we determined earlier in the term for a motion that was made was, is it something, A, that could have been put on the agenda on the Friday before, and I think that's the case, or B, is it something that can be put on the agenda for the following meeting? And if it is yes to either one of those questions, then it's to be discussed at that time and not this time.
I think it's important enough that it should have been discussed before this. In fact, I think it was important enough that a special meeting should have been called. But you're the mayor. and
That's
you
correct.
And you didn't do it. And I think it was important enough. I think it wasn't as important then as I do think it is now. So
you think
that's a
it's-
motion, and
you
it's
think
seconded.
it's as
I think we
important?
should take a position. Well, I was speaking. So I think that we should have taken a position, given the importance of
Now you're
that
discussing
company,
something other than the motion.
And the importance to this
You'd rather violate state law.
I don't think
and-
anybody is going to oppose us having an opinion on the importance.
I'd refer to the city solicitor on the requirements of the state law that we post things prior to posting things on the agenda.
Are you opposed to sending a letter
Madam
of
Solicitor.
support? Are you opposed to it?
Madam Solicitor,
Well, first of all, we did revisit this issue not so long ago, and the conclusion, and I think it was supported by the entire council, was that when these instances would come up, that we would utilize the test that the mayor has articulated. And I guess the first question then would be, was this something that could have been put on the agenda timely? In other words, is there some reason, was there some impediment as to why on Friday this could not have been timely put on the agenda, particularly a matter of great importance? So that's the first question, and I guess through the chair, I would refer it back to the maker of the motion.
Could have, would have, should have. I should have. I didn't. I wanted to bring it up now. I think it's important. We don't meet for 2 more weeks. I think this is an ongoing issue, and I think it's important for us to go on the record. I don't know what the big deal is. I think the intent of the open meeting law is not to spring something or put something on the agenda that the public would have an interest in and come to and feel that it was being slid through at the 11th hour. I don't think this is the case. The case is just to make a point that this city council should go on record. Maybe I should have been a little bit more specific, but I didn't really think it was that big of an issue, as so many other times we suspend the rules for things I think are less important that could have been put on the agenda, whether before or after the next meeting. I think that it's important for us to go on record because I don't think this is the end, and they're having another meeting in August, and I think we need to keep the momentum going. That's the only reason for it. What are we going to wait, another 2 weeks to bring this up? I think it's unreasonable, and I don't think it's necessary. I don't think this is crossing a threshold of trying to not give the public a chance to come and speak on something. I think the public has made themselves very clear. I don't think this body has, and given what that family and that man has done for the city and his father, I think we should go on record.
Madam Solicitor?
In any event, if that was the first part of the test, and I guess the second question is, again, is there some reason why it would negate the purpose of the motion if we were to wait and have it properly put on the agenda and discussed next week or next meeting in 2 weeks?
Isn't it?
Is there a
Am I-
time constraint? Would it render the motion moot?
Is the next meeting not in 3 weeks?
Well, regardless of when the next meeting is this of a time-sensitive nature, so that...
Yeah, I do think
If-
it's important. I think there's another...
Well, I understand that you think it's important.
Well, you asked me the question, so I answered it. I think it's important. I think it's time-sensitive. There's another board meeting in August by the Market Basket Corporation, and I do think time is of importance. Yes, the next meeting in this council is not for 3 weeks, as far as I know.
The next meeting is August 13th. I don't know what the next meeting of the Demoulas Corporations is, but really don't see what the point of this is for the public.
Thank
Councilor
you.
Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to take a point of personal privilege at this time to discuss a topic that I can't discuss under suspension of the rules, because we just got a ruling, which I don't agree with the ruling, but I'm not an attorney. But I can take a point of personal privilege and say that what happened with the Demoulas situation, in my opinion, is that I feel that we misstepped something. And I'm going to be telling you that that was a part of my fault as well. Here we have a situation where thousands of people in the city of Lowell, their children, their husbands, their wives are employed with one of the largest employers of the city of Lowell, and we didn't form a resolution in support. I certainly support the man who has done a tremendous job with filling a gap when money is needed here, and he's still doing it to this day. I know firsthand of all the things that he has done would fill this whole council chamber and take so many hours for me to explain everything that he has done, and we don't have enough time. I think time is of the essence. I know that we didn't put one on in a timely manner. A motion is not here. It probably should have been. I slipped on it. I should have. We should have supported a resolution stating that we support Arthur T. Demoulas for everything that he has done, not just for his shopping store for reasonable prices, but for the employment of numerous people in this, not just Lowell, but the community as well. I think it's a time-sensitive issue. I think we should go on record. I know another meeting may come up. They probably didn't vote this month, but by God, in August, they probably will. I think that we should have done something. And I'm not blaming you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a part of the city council too, and I slipped up on it. I should have done something about it as well, and I didn't, and I'll take my responsibility for it. We should have banded together and support a great leader in this community that has done so much. That's what I just want to say. Thank you.
Madam Solicitor.
Sure. Again, as far as the legal issues and we have the state law that was changed not that long ago. It's intended to put people on notice and to have things properly placed on our agenda. And the reason I believe that this came up is that there are numerous instances that will come up in which that hasn't happened. And so what I was speaking to wasn't even necessarily a legal issue. It was when this issue was brought before the council, this is how the council decided to address it. And walking through that test, which is what I was attempting to do, is essentially how the council had agreed to take up these issues. So that in the event that there was something that you had missed putting on the agenda timely, that if it was time sensitive, you could still bring it up. It still gave the flexibility, and we could cure it in other ways. That's why I was asking the questions of the maker of the motion, not just whether you feel it's important, but was there a reason, was there an impediment as to why it couldn't timely get on the agenda for Friday? And B, is it of such a time-sensitive nature that it needs to be addressed by the council tonight? If there is a vote coming up, and we know that it's coming up prior to the council meeting again, then that's something that the council could, and the chair, could take into consideration and act on it. I haven't heard that as of yet, other than the fact that there's a potential meeting sometime in August, and maybe somebody has definitive information as to when it's going to occur. But that's what I was speaking to. The very rules that the council put in place.
Council Mercy.
Okay, and this is my second time speaking on this issue. Then I don't know why, and I'm thinking out loud, if Councilor Elliott comes back in 3 weeks to ask for a resolution, then it has to be drawn up. So why can't we suspend the rules and allow the solicitor to peruse it and put the wording together so that we can just vote on it on that particular time? That's the time sensitive that I'm talking about. We really should do something. I mean, at least I feel that way. This man has been so instrumental in the livelihood of many of our constituents and their families that I slipped up, and I'm not throwing blame here. I'm just as guilty as anybody else, because I think we should have stepped up to the plate and supported this gentleman. And I think it is time sensitive. I would like to see if there's a way that we could direct this to you, Madam Solicitor, draw a resolution up so that we can just vote on it and have it in place instead of going down the road and having it come into September. Because I'm thinking this isn't over. Maybe it's over. I hope it is, because I don't like to see people in turmoil like that. So maybe we could do that. I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Madam Solicitor.
We have done that even without a discussion of the council. When it has come to the attention of the law department that there's something time-sensitive coming up, we have prepared it, put it on the agenda, and given the council an ability to act on it. And certainly something like that could be done in this particular case, even if it weren't formally addressed by the council.
All right.
Councilor Martin and Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, Councilor Mercier raises a good point about, resolutions, right? I mean, I think if that's where we're headed here, I mean, we have one tonight, that was voted at the last meeting. So usually that takes 2 meetings. So I think that factor alone might, put this in the time-sensitive category where, it's at least worthy of discussion. I think, if you look back at the history, this matter became known to the public only last week, and there was swift reaction by certainly Market Basket employees and many others. The council didn't meet last week, which is unfortunate, but I don't think it at all detracts from our feelings about Mr. Demoulas. I think Arthur Demoulas has been a good leader of Market Basket for many years. His generosity to causes in the city, I think, is well known to all of us. I think certainly, I won't speak for myself, but I'm virtually certain that all the other councilors feel the same way, that here's a man who's done great good for his company, for his employees, and for the city of Lowell, where this company was founded. So I don't think that Councilor Mercier should be so sorry to take blame for the fact that we haven't acted when we didn't have a forum to act. I mean, all this came up just a few days before the company's scheduled board meeting. So certainly, if the council wants to go on record in support of Mr. Demoulas, I'm happy to support that. If we want to, just vote to direct the solicitor to prepare something that's going to be suitable for signature for the next meeting, I'm fully supportive of that. You know, but this is a man and a company who've been very good to the city of Lowell. I think we all know that. I think we all agree with that. And it's unfortunate sometimes that, you know, we're stuck with rules that we have to live by, and that it's inconvenient many times for us, and it's cumbersome. And I wish they weren't the way they are many times, because it does make it look like we're prone to an action. You know, you want to act quickly when it's called for, and if your hands are tied by state statutes, that's too bad. I mean, that's the reality of the situation we're in, however. So, you know, I'm fully supportive of efforts to go on record in support of Mr. Demoulas. However, you know, we need to work within our framework to get there, I think is something we should be able to do.
Councilor Elliott.
Well, I'm glad we're able to talk about this. That's all I wanted to do to begin with. And it is time sensitive, and we do all know it. I mean, I felt bad as well that we didn't act, and I didn't know really what we could have and should have done. So I do take the blame, because we should support Arthur T, because Arthur T and his family has supported Lowell. And I have many personal experiences, like we probably all do, with that family. I saw them weekly. I coached their children, and they're just wonderful people. They raised their children to be respectful and humble, and just like every other child on the team, they want no special treatment. And that's why I wanted to bring this forward, because it is important to the public, Mr. Mayor. It's important because it's about jobs, it's about giving back, it's about keeping prices low for the people in this community. You know, the Demoulas family invested in a place in the city of Lowell, across from the Barns, in a place that he wanted to do it there because it's in the middle of the acre, right next to people that really need affordable prices. So I think not only I wanted to bring forward a motion, a resolution, a letter of support, anything, but I also thought it was important to have the mayor's office reach out to those communities and have them send letters of support who have stores in their community. Because I do think it's important to keep momentum going. So that would be, there is no motion. I make a motion that we have the mayor send a letter and, or whatever is the best, draft a resolution to, because I think a letter is really the appropriate thing to do, to send to the board of directors of the Market Basket Corporation to let them know and to detail those projects that Arthur Demoulas has participated and contributed. Charities, hospitals, schools, organizations. I can tell you how generous he has been just to the soccer organization, never wanting any recognition. So, you know, for those reasons and the way he treats his employees in this community, I think it's important for us to send a letter in a timely manner, as well as reach out to other communities and have them do the same.
Councilor Mercy.
Now, Mr. Mayor, Councilor Elliott, you just made a motion which we just got a ruling that you can't. So this is what we're doing.
We can't write a letter?
You're going to make the motion for the next city council meeting in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is, for a resolution in support of Arthur T. Demoulas. And in conjunction with that, in an effort to save time, I'm hoping that, and I'm sure there'll be a resolution that we can sign to forward it off. That's the only way we can do this.
Well, wait a minute. I thought I heard that if it's...
Counselor, you'll be recognized first before you speak. Counselor
Okay.
Lurie has
Well, I did have the floor.
No, you didn't. Counselor Mercier had the floor, and now Counselor Lurie has the floor because he raised his hand afterwards, and that's how it's going to work. Then you'll have the floor.
Could I get a
Counselor Lurie.
clarification from the city solicitor?
Counselor Elliott, you will be recognized before you speak. Counselor Lurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was sitting here listening, And again, I agree with Councilor Martin, the timetable last week, how much time we had to act in. You know, I've seen the newspaper and I've heard the radio, and I know what the Demoulas family has done for this city. I know, and I don't know any of the Demoulas. I've never met Arthur T. I've never met his cousin. I don't know anyone in the Demoulas family. All I can go is the reputation of the city itself and what they've done for the city in a charitable way and in a business way. But beyond that, I was a little surprised at the media assault on the council. As Councilor Martin says, we only had a couple of days to act, and quite frankly, it's not a motion I would bring in. I don't know enough about the situation. I don't know enough about the Demoulas Corporation. As I said, I've never met the family. I don't know them, but I will attest to their generosity in this city and everything they have done. So obviously I would support the resolution, but I just want to concur with Councilor Martin. I think that the timetable here was really wasn't a benefit for any councilor here on the floor who knew the Demoulas, or who knows a little bit more about the company than I do, who would have brought the resolution forward. Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
I thought the threshold was if it was time sensitive, and it is time sensitive. It is time sensitive to get this moving. So it should be passed tonight so it can be presented for the next meeting, so it can go in the mail. The next meeting could be after the board meeting. We don't know, so why should we take a chance? That's what I don't understand. We've missed one deadline, and I don't know what the board meeting is. What if it's before the 13th and we have not met? I just don't get what the big issue is with sending a letter of support to this organization. I don't understand it.
Madam Solicitor.
What I had indicated to Councilor Mercier is that there are numerous instances, or instances that have come up in the past, where their time is of the essence, and we have prepared resolutions and brought them to the council. Even if it hadn't been discussed, if somebody had reached out and indicated that this was coming up, because it would be on the agenda and it would still go before the council. I was asking, in terms of it being time sensitive, whether you had reached out and to inquire about a date, or if you knew of a date or anything of that nature. In the meantime, these matters are usually handled by a resolution of the entire council, and we wouldn't be prepared to do that tonight in any event. And so the Councilor Mercier's solution, I think, is a very good one, which is we start the process early so that when it does come before the council, there's a resolution here and it can all be acted on all at the same time. And that's what we were speaking to.
Councilor Elliott.
Okay, this is ludicrous. We've spent 30 minutes discussing first whether we can suspend the rules or not, and whether this is time sensitive or not. This is a simple request, letter of support to a company that has been wonderful to this city, its employees, its citizens, hospitals, charitable organizations, A to Z. This is a no-brainer. We should just vote on it. It's not violating any open meeting law. It's not crossing any threshold of whatever rules we have established, which are broken or compromised regularly. So I've said my piece. I'm ready to vote on it. People want to wait later. Fine. I'm going to support it one way or the other. This should have been done in 5 minutes.
I agree that it should have been done in less, and that it is ludicrous. We do have a motion on the floor by Councilor Mercier, seconded by Councilor Noon. For a suspension of the rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Motion by Councilor Mercier. Repeat your motion, please, for the rest of the council.
I would ask that my colleague, Councilor Elliott, brings forth a motion at the next city council meeting in conjunction with the solicitor drawing up a resolution, so that we don't have to have a motion, send it to the solicitor, have her draw up a motion. It's already in place. That's the only way that I can see that we're not violating the law here. And it is time sensitive, but we have to follow the rules, and that's the only way I can figure out how to do it. So
That's correct. Counsel Mercia, seconded by Counsel Martin. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. I thought we'd get to the first item on the agenda, but we'll instead go to the public hearing, being after 7 o'clock. Ordinance to create a temporary position of lead hazard control grant program manager in the Department of Planning and Development. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilman Johnson, second by Council Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. In City Council ordinance, an ordinance creating one temporary position of lead hazard control grant program manager and the salary therefore in the Department of Planning and Development. I'd open it up at this time for those wishing to speak in favor. In favor? In favor? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. I'd open it up for those wishing to speak in opposition. In opposition? In opposition. Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move to approve by Council Mercia, second by Council Mendonça. Any discussion?
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Thank you. I don't want the viewing public to think that we're setting up another person to hire, and it's going to come from the budget. This is a grant-funded position that when the funds cease, so does the position. So it's actually paying for itself. It's a very important position, and that's why I moved approval.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes?
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nolan. Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy. Counselor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Laurie.
Yes.
8 yeas.
First, we have Mayor's Business Resolution establishing the sister city between Lowell and Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. What's the wish of the council? Motion to approve by Council Mendonça, second by Council Noon. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nolan. Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy. Counselor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Laurie.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have under the city clerk's portion of the agenda, minutes of the city council meeting July 9th, Public Safety Subcommittee July 9th for acceptance. Move to approve by Council Noon, seconded by Council Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have under the city auditor's portion of the agenda, communication, fourth quarter 2013 cash controls review. Any discussion? Entertain a motion then to accept and place on file. So moved by Council Martin, seconded by Council Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Communication next for the June end-of-year budget reports. Any discussion? Entertain a motion to accept and place on file. So moved by Council Mendonça, seconded by Council Noon. All those-
Question?
Discussion? Council Elliott.
This is actually, okay, it's the cash controls, I'm sorry. We went past it. Can I just ask the Madam Auditor, a question on the year-to-date budget revenue report? I noticed on line item, thank you, under code and inspection building permits, that it's down by almost 400,000. I'm sorry, maybe Mr. Moses wants to answer it. We projected $800,000 and only half of it has come in.
Correct. We discussed this, I think, with the May reports that building inspections are down this year.
Right.
The
So
budget,
how
I
do we
believe, was
cover
based
that?
on the prior year, and it's one of our lower years.
So how do we cover $400,000 in a revenue gap?
Well, luckily, what ends up happening is you budget X amount in revenues, and some things come in over, some things come in under, and in all actuality, at the end of the year, what you're really looking at is your revenues over your expenses, which we increased, fund balance by almost $2 million.
Right. Well, it looks like there's a $320,000 gap at this point.
Correct.
So I understand some of the other, gap was covered. Where's that 320 going to be covered from? Because this is under, miscellaneous or local receipts.
You have to look in total of the total revenue that we take in for the whole fiscal year versus the total expenses for the whole fiscal year. And like I said, our revenues were over our expenses by almost $2 million.
So what did we project for next year? Did we use the same 800,000 figure for building and code and permits?
I don't remember off the top of my head, perhaps Mr. Moses recalls.
That's it, I'll look in the budget. Okay, thank you.
I think we've adjusted it down though, but I don't know by how much.
Any further discussion? This on budget reports. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have unfinished business. Do you want to take that up now, or would you like to delay until after they manage this portion of the agenda? If the
Move to take them up now.
Councilor Mendonça would take the chair.
Motion by Mayor Murphy, request city manager consider ways to encourage a more participatory budget process, including the use of mini-challenge grants for proposals relevant to the operation of various departments. Second by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. New York City has a budget process which seeks to include more and more people into the process by putting aside discretionary funds for people to really get into the calculus of sound budget decisions. Clearly, New York City has much more in the way of resources than the city of Lowell does. And so the idea is really to tap into some of the ideas that people might have in the community or within departments themselves to improve to improve some of the programming that happens for a number of the different departments. And I think that if you had very small grants that were allowed, as I had made a motion the last meeting, at the same meeting actually, for the technology mini grants, that you're tapping into the talents and knowledge of a number of different people across the community and potentially improving departments because of that. So you could look at all kinds of different programming that might happen in the parks or for Cool or a number of other of the departments in public safety. And so I think in that way it would get more and more people involved and that you would have programs and projects that are more reflective of what people would like to see. Thank you.
Councilor Leahy.
Thank you. Is there any, do we do any of this now? Do we encourage people now to step up with ideas or offer them days off or comp time or anything like that?
All right, it's a question to Mr. Moses. Could you answer?
We as a city don't have a formal program to offer anything. We did have something codified in the old personnel ordinance that was never really enacted. In fact, a good portion of the personnel ordinance was devoted to describing that process, which we never implemented. I think, though informally, I think many departments seek the expertise of the staff without reward. If what you're talking about is coming up with a way to fund ideas or alternatively to present some award for good ideas, I think that would have to be developed.
Okay, because I feel that, I mean, we've tried to promote this for years in the school department as a member of the school committee, and I feel too that part of the solution has to come from the management down, because a lot of people I talk to may not come up with good ideas because they feel they don't get listened to, or they might be undermining their bosses, say. So I think there has to be a change in attitude also. It's not always so much just giving people a reward.
It's trying to change the attitude. If somebody has a good idea, bring it forward. And if someone brings an idea forward and it's not yours, you know, that's the way it is. Just encourage people to bring good ideas for the betterment of the city or the school system or whatever it may be. So I think that's got to be a big part of this process, too. Thanks.
Mr. Moses?
I do know that those things actually do occur, and I'll give one example. I'm sure every department has an example. The treasurer's office, on the day that taxes are due, they rotate their schedule so that the office is actually staffed 15 minutes after 5 o'clock and 15 minutes before 5 o'clock. That was an idea from one of the employees. I know we implement ideas like that across the city all the time. I am just not aware of every single instance that that's happened.
Mayor Murphy?
Just to clarify on the motion, that the idea behind the participatory budget process isn't necessarily exclusively targeted to employees of the city, or even primarily targeted to employees of the city, but that to get more citizens involved. You know, we had a budget process in June where nobody spoke on the budget, and maybe that's because there were no complaints, but maybe it's also because there wasn't, you know, really enough involvement of people in collective decision-making. And I think that a number of departments could really benefit from the knowledge and talents of people without, you know, from without the city departments, to be able to do things more effectively and in a way that's more in keeping of what people actually want to see in their neighborhoods and community. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager report on potential of a more participatory capital improvement plan, which would pilot the use of a Kickstarter-like process with thresholds for contributions and contributors to meet before a city match is made. Seconded by Councilor Laurie. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. And this is clearly along the same lines. There are a number of projects I think that people within the city would like to see happen, but probably don't see in the capital improvement plan. And this really builds maybe into the process a kind of investment, both on the part of the people who would like to see it happen, but also from the city, that there are maybe certain thresholds that might be met in terms of the number of contributors to a project that's listed online or in some other form. The people, you can see both the number of supporters, but also the sort of force of support, given the number of contributions towards that. And then based on that, there would be some kind of city match. This is something that's been tried in London, England, and has worked pretty well. And I think it's worth trying here, because as much as we have invested this year in capital projects, I always think that we can do more, and that, you know, people will have different ideas about that as well. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager explore approach to vacant lots similar to Adopt a Lot program of Baltimore, with formal process to ensure fairness and to return land to productive use in both the short term and the midterm. Seconded by Councilor Laurie. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. This is something that I've thought a little bit about, that we have a number of lots throughout the city that are city-owned, and that I think while we're waiting for some kind of productive use, whether it be private enterprise or a nonprofit use or use even by the city, these lots could be put to public use, and that various groups within the vicinity of these vacant lots would be able to come up with their own ideas on how to use them, and to be able to enter into license agreements to be able to do that, but in a way that emphasizes that it's really short-term, unless something really falls through in the long term, that it's a short-term thing, that there's an understanding that the city can at any time use it for their end use, for their whether it's private enterprise development or a different city use. But it would establish, I think, a fairer way of making sure that each group that might have an idea for that particular piece of property has access to that, and that it's done in a standardized way. Thank you.
Councilor Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I think that we have a pretty good plan in place as it is. First off, if we have a vacant lot, we have the yard sale program. It's offered to abutters. To me, that's the fairest way because they live there. Maybe they bought this house years ago and they would like to have a little driveway or a little garden, and it's offered to the most advantageous. And sometimes, and I've noticed that property is divided in half, and this neighbor will buy that half and the other neighbor will buy the other half, because at one time it probably was a buildable lot, but it isn't anymore. So that, to me, is quite fair. Then we have probably bigger lots, and sprinkling up amongst the city of the community gardens. We just did one on a particular street off of Salem Street over there, where it was a derelicted building that was a cut-through to a drug house, and it burnt, and now people were dumping things there, and now it's a community garden, state-of-the-art. The youth build came by and built a shed to house the tools in, and neighbors are watering it and growing something out of it. There's life and there's sustainability there. We also have condo parking lots where neighbors are apt to, we have one on Chestnut Street Walnut Street. I knew it was some type of a nut, but it was a Walnut Street over there in the back central neighborhood area. I think we have a very good plan in place. If the maker of the motion thinks that there's more discussion that should be, I know I'd rather see use be acquired by these vacant lots than to see them left barren all these years where someone could get a purpose. I know that on Middlesex Street, there was a roof that was ready to collapse. I called the city manager, I told him about it, and he got S&R, some company, to come down. They demolished it. The shelter asked me if maybe they could have a community garden there at one point, and they kind of, Home Depot brought in a lot of soil and did a lot for it. Now there's a new group that's taken over it, that's utilized, and when you go by there, gee, you think you're in the country because you see all the vegetables that are growing there. It's fenced in and beautiful, so I think we do have a lot in place. It's not to say that we shouldn't have more opportunities, but I think what we have in place right now is fairly fair, is pretty well fair, but it's just my comments on this motion.
Councilor Noon.
Thank you. I believe Councilor Mercy has indicated some of the things that have been done with regard to the community garden, the lot that both sides of the property owners divided and expand their green space and or garden. I know it's happening. I'm not sure if we do have a process in place. I'm not sure. It's always good to have a process in place so that we can follow. I know that some of the things is happening that Councilor Mercier indicated happening, this motion probably went a little further to say, look, it's happening, but we need to have a process in places that call for fairness and inclusiveness, so to speak. So I'm not sure if there's a process in place, and that's the question.
Everyone in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Well,
Can I,
Councilor Elliott.
well, Mass General Law, public land is for the public. And we do have a yard sale program, and it's a good program. But when disposing of any public land, there is a notification process, whether it's a lease or rent, or we could, maybe even a memorandum of understanding, but everybody should have the opportunity to speak. I mean, we're talking about state laws before. I mean, it's publicly held land, so it should be, there's a process if we're going to dispose or lease or let use. I'm sure there's some liability issues as well. If it's state-owned, city-owned property, we've got to get reassurances and/or releases of some nature that if someone gets injured, or the city is not going to be held liable. So I have a lot of questions and concerns with use and, just letting somebody use it. I mean, there was a community garden request that came through, but it came through this council, and we approved it. So I'm not so sure about this motion.
Councilor Ori.
Thank you. The motion just says to explore. Now, I agree with Councilor Mercier. I know Dave Koch, I think, runs the parking lot up on Walnut Street. It's at the corner of Walnut and Chapel. And I think that's a great idea. We do have the community gardens. And I think we just sold a lot here within the past 6 months in Centerville, too, in Abutter. We have a lot of good programs here in the city. But the idea here, it just says explore. And I don't think it hurts to get a report on what adopt a lot would be. It may be something that would benefit the city, the citizens here in the city, to just take a look at it. It says to explore, and that's really all we're doing. Thank you.
Councilor Martin.
Yes, and to that point, I don't view this as this says for land, that, at least as I understand it, it's before the lot is sold. So I don't view it as being inconsistent with the yard sale program. I think the yard sale program's terrific. I think it works well. And I think the comments about community gardens are right to the point. I think something like this could lead to more community gardens, for example, or other uses that we're not thinking of now in the short term while the city's evaluating its options for some of these lots. So I don't view this to be inconsistent with what we're doing now. I think, though, it might lead to, I thought we had a nice story about the community gardens here in the city, and that could lead to more of them or other things. So.
Councilor Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I don't know the answer to this, so we have the person here, through you to the department, Planning Department Director, Mr. Bakey. Do we have a policy or a plan in place?
Mr. Baking.
I think, good evening, councilors. There isn't one simple answer to that question, and I think some of the points that have been made by some of the councilors are useful. Certainly, I also heard that this is what I think, to the maker of the motion, I believe this was about an interim use prior to the permanent disposition for parcels where we may be saving them for an intended long-term use, and so something like the yard sale program, which is a very good program that's been very well used and the council's done a great job with, might not apply because that's permanent and it would preclude some future use. I mean, to bring this, perhaps bring this home a little bit, one parcel that this might be applicable to is there's a piece of land on Gorham Street next to the Gorham Street Fire Station that's city-owned. And it has been held for a number of years by the city and retained despite some requests to purchase it from the city because it is adjacent to the Gorham Street Firehouse, and that at some point, the fire department has consistently indicated that they would like to see a larger fire station in that area. And if that is the case, it's probably not in the city's long-term interest to divest of that lot through the yard sale program or any of the other tools or programs that we have. But I think what I believe I'm hearing about this motion is that perhaps there could be a way to look at it in terms of some short-term uses that are not permanent, that would allow this lot to perhaps be cared for or utilized more productively while we're holding it for that long-term use. And we certainly have, and you've pointed out, Councilor, a couple of really great examples that, while maybe not originally intended for that purpose, serve that purpose very well. The community gardens is one, and the car condos are another. Both of those are cases where the city retains the underlying ownership, but there's a very productive interim use. And this, I think, would just give us perhaps formalize the process of making sure that we are thoughtful about that with every opportunity. The one other caution I would if I could just take a moment to give is that the vast majority of the vacant lots in the city are not city-owned. And the vast majority are perceived to be city-owned, but the vast majority are not. So while I think there's a lot worth exploring with respect to this, and a lot of these other programs are very good ones, I just want to caution those who may be watching this at home who have a vacant lot on their block or something like that. The majority of the vacant lots in the city, particularly in the neighborhoods, are properties that are either have an owner or are in some form of tax title foreclosure in some process. So this program also probably wouldn't apply to those. But there definitely are examples where this might be useful.
Thank you.
Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Bakey had hit on a few points. I would say that, just in taking an afternoon and walking through a couple of different neighborhoods, I was able to identify probably a dozen properties where I could then confirm by GIS that they were actually city-owned. And so maybe it would be useful, in addition to setting up a formal process for people who might have competing uses. It was mentioned about the community gardens. It was also mentioned about, the neighborhood condos, the car condos. There could be a number of different things that happen there and that people want to see happen there. The property across from the old Butler School was in my neighborhood, and I had heard for years that this was something that the fire department was going to use, that the old Butler School was something that was waiting for a private development years and years down the road. So it is about interim uses, but it might also be helpful then for people within the neighborhood to know whether or not it's a city-owned property, is just to very simply post a sign on the property. And then maybe you could begin to get ideas from people in the surrounding neighborhood about what they would like to see there, or what they'd like to see there at least in the few years before Department of Planning and Development figures out what to do with it. Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Through you to the solicitor, when the community gardens project came before us, what was the legal process that had to be done? They came before, I think, was it a motion that was filed, and then the manager came back with a report, and then it was voted on? Was it voted on by this council to allow that to take place?
Madam Solicitor.
I would want to double check this, but I believe that what came before the council was the overriding policy of doing this. And a number of the things that you had mentioned as potential issues with disposition of property, whether it's short-term or long-term, are things that were addressed as part of this process. So getting waivers and making sure that there was insurance available, or an agreement to indemnify the city in the event that there is injury or damage. Those are all parts of the process that were implemented when the program was initiated.
So there's a process in place?
There was a process put in place, and I believe that when it came to the council, that's what came before the council. But I'll be happy to check on that and then report back to you and the rest of the council.
So how does that differ than what we're being asked for tonight?
Well, that is just one option as to what to do with available properties, and I believe my understanding of the nature of this motion is that given the numerous instances of properties that the city owns and controls, but might not be putting to any current use for sometimes years forward, that this would put together ground rules and parameters that everybody would follow, so that if there was a sort of predisposition of the property, short-term disposition of the property, that there'd be a set of guidelines established by the council to ensure that when that happens, that it happens in an orderly, fair, equitable manner, in the same way that the council addressed community gardens and the carports.
At what point does the state law kick in? I mean, there's a state law that have very specific guidelines
Sure.
on disposition or use or lease or rent
Right.
of rental of public property.
Right, this would all be done in conjunction with 30B Section 16, which speaks to the disposition of real property, whether it's done by means of sale or whether it's done by means of a lease. So whatever would formally be put into place, it would always have to comply with the state law. But you'd be setting up a program here in the city that, again, would ensure that whatever disposition takes place, maybe on a short-term basis and a more frequent basis, that it be done in a fair, consistent, and equitable manner.
Okay. To me, it seems like we got all the bases covered, so I'm not sure what really is being asked to explore what. There's state law, there's a yard sale, there's a policy in place that we have used already, so I don't even know what's being asked. That's different than anything that, from the answers that we've been given.
Move the question.
Counsel Martin moved the question, seconded by Counsel Laurie. All those in favor of moving the question signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. All those in favor of the mayor's motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Motion carries. One opposed. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager develop more formal and rigorous land use board training and professional development program for appointees to attend regularly and prior to duties as board members. Seconded by Councilor Mercier. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was something that I had mentioned in making another motion about the number of variances that were granted by some of the land use boards, but it pretty much speaks for itself. Thank you.
Council Laurie.
Thank you. I put this motion in. I know Mayor Murphy was out for a while, but I did put in a motion several weeks ago asking the manager to develop a board training system for new members, and I don't think that the mayor was here. We haven't received that report yet. So if they could incorporate this into that motion, if it's okay with Mayor Murphy. It's basically the same motion. Thank you.
Mayor Murphy.
Sure, that's fine with me. The motion I was referencing was from last term, actually. I think at the end of the last term.
So those in favor of the motion as amended signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. If the mayor would resume the chair.
Thank you. Next, we have under the city manager's portion of the agenda, communication from city manager, responses to city council motions and requests. Any discussion? Council Mercia.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On one of my motions, I'm very happy that our city clerk will probably be getting an extra person to help. The manager is going to put out a RFP for an outside firm to come in for several months so that we don't tie up valuable city resources to complete the project of scanning documents and things like that. I think that's a good thing. I'm sure our clerk is pretty happy because it has to get done and it's just so far in the arrears. Also, Councilor Leahy got a response back from a motion that he made about to have the police department do a report on the traffic safety in the neighborhoods. And we did get the report back, and it talked about the traffic unit specializes, specifically engages in traffic enforcement when they observe a violation. And I would want to just comment on that briefly because there is a situation over there in Centerville, up at the hill, up at the corner of 13th and July Street, whereby there's a park nearby, and people have cookouts and picnics and everything else, and that's wonderful that they're utilizing that land. But they tend to park, it's an L-shaped, and they park right up to the corner, and traffic on the neighborhood can't get by. It's very tight. So police do not stop and ticket anybody, although the unwritten rule that you don't see a sign there, the rule says no parking here to corner on all city corners 20 feet away from a corner. So in order to make things understandable, I had a sign put up there, no parking here to corner, and people are still parking there. Police are called, and police are not even ticketing people. So this paper here isn't telling me the truth, because they've called numerous times there. Police came, saw the car parked right to the corner, even with a sign there, and still didn't get ticketed. I don't know what we have to do to enforce the law, so I'm telling you that this paper isn't truthful, and I'm upset about that because here people are calling. Now, if an emergency vehicle needed to go by, an ambulance or a fire truck or whatever, it's impossible. I mean, and if they park 20 feet from the corner, they could have made that swing. They could make that swing. And I get the sign there, and the police are called, and nothing's happening. I just want to make a note of that. That's very frustrating to not only me, but the neighbors that have to live there, and people that live on July Street can't even get by. I mean, if you took a survey, you'd see that what I'm telling you is the truth, and so I just want to comment on those two things. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Council Lori and then Council Leahy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a couple of motions that came back. One was for the cost of the primary election, if we have a primary. And I want to thank the department for putting that together. When you look at I think it's about 48,000, but then you add in the police and so on and so forth. But we've already had 2 special elections this year, so it's just keeping up with the cost. And the other one is, I received back was from the Lowell Police Department. I had asked that they possibly develop a motorcycle safety program for Lowell residents. And we have a lot of young riders. And I want to thank the police department for coming back with this. This is the 3rd time I've asked them to develop a program. The first time was the summer safety program in the parks. They did a tremendous job. Last year I put in and asked if they would develop a self-defense class for women. Former Chief LaValle called me. They couldn't keep up with the demand. I talked to Officer Tommy Fleming. Tommy just says it's a program that's really popular, and now this. And not only do the police get out into the community, but they get to meet the people out there. The people get to meet the police, and I think it breaks down a lot of barriers, and I think it's good for the public safety in the city. And I just wanted to thank the police department, the law department, the election department for coming back with these motions. Thank you.
Council Leahy.
Thank you. I just had a couple of comments on a few of the motions. The first one was the motion of mine for the neighborhood traffic. And I did want to bring that point up that Councilor Mercia did, that, you know, we need to find a way to get back to the basics, because we're not enforcing people parking on the corners. We're not enforcing the parking on the sidewalks. And it's a real problem, and it needs to be addressed. However, we need to work with the police department, but, you know, people are getting fed up with that again, and it's a problem that's coming back again, and it needs to be addressed. It's safety issues for people walking. It's safety issues for fire apparatus in the neighborhoods, and it's very important that we address it, and I'm glad that Councilor Mercia brought that up. I had another question on, maybe to Mr. Bakey, on my motion for the signage at the Pawtuckaville School. They said they're gonna get to the signage maybe by the end of before the school year starts, but in relation to this, I noticed that there's a lot of signage going up in the city, and I didn't know who's paying for that. We seem to be putting a ton of signage up, and the signage is, there's signs telling us that there's a stop sign coming ahead, and then there's a lot of signs telling us where streets are. So is this a city program or a state program? I don't know why we need to know so much that there's a stop sign coming up, or where certain streets are. I thought my street signs were more important at the schoolyard, where the kids are running around in heavier traffic, versus knowing where Mill Street is over in the acre. I don't know why there's a sign there.
I can speak to that. A lot of folks have probably noticed that at a number of the stop-controlled intersections across the city, there have been new stop signs erected that are larger than the ones that have historically been in those locations, often on both sides of the road, as well as advanced warning signs of intersections that are sometimes a little difficult to see, and some new striping of the pavement markings for about 100 feet on either side of those intersections. That's all been done by Mass DOT as part of a program that they're implementing across the state. They have identified the stop-controlled intersections across the state that have the highest issues of safety concern. And these are measures that they feel have been proven to help reduce the safety concern at those high-priority locations. So there's no city expense attached to that. We just agreed that they could make those improvements in our city, which we think are a good thing. And they are doing them for us, and have been, I guess, doing them in the dark of night, so that they've been sort of showing up the next morning. But we definitely think that's a positive thing. And, you know, certainly in many cases, a lot of these are intersections where the stop signs have been difficult to see in the past, and this definitely improves that condition. So I hope that we will see a reduction in accidents at these locations as a result of that state investment. We certainly should appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. I have one other question on the motion from paving of Johnson Street, and I don't know who this question would go to, but have we started our summer paving yet? Because I know we get our weekly update, but I've noticed, you know, some of the streets really are crumbling underneath us. They've been doing a lot of work on Hovey Street, and it's really taken a beating, and I don't know if that street has moved up the list or not, but it needs to. And then with all the rain, Douglas Road, and I'm sure there's many other streets, but these streets where I drive all the time, I just noticed them really falling apart this year, and I didn't know when we're gonna expect to see some of the roads being repaved.
Excuse me, as you noticed in the weekly update, I believe its capital plan is expected to begin around August 1st. It was out to bid. Chapter 90 money, because of the delays, will be approximately September 1st. So a little bit behind as they were last year because of the state funding. Some of the roads may have deteriorated, but the list, based on the funding for this year, was set as with the roads that they thought could be accommodated by the amount of funding. As noted, the funding, the contract came in lower than expected, so there's some headroom. And so they hope that, at least with Johnson Street or others, that have a low PCI index, they can possibly squeeze some of those in this year as they move along and see that there aren't any other expenses above and beyond what has been bid.
Okay.
So the hope is that, as noted, that this one can be put in, and depending on what's left at the end, they can address some additional things, and again, based on weather and how things change.
Right, okay. And one other thing on the manager's portion, it's really not in here, but do we have an update on the Kearney Square Bridge? I know that it's been delayed, but it's really getting ridiculous now.
I just talked with the engineers today on that, and it's still an indefinite hold right now.
Is there any way we can, it's really,
We can ask again, but it's between National Grid and L at this point, and we've prodded and hoping that they move quickly on getting the piece that they need to get done. I don't know if you have any further on that, but
it just seems that, like, that's something where we need to take action and, as a council, and demand somehow that, I don't know, were there things in the clause that, I know it's done under they're paying for it, but something needs to be done. It's just too long now. Thank you.
Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mayor. Back to the Johnson Street. You have the timetable when the Johnson Street's going to be starting?
there's no timetable. What we need to do is take a look at what the paving list that was established for the budget that was set, where we are with that. John Street was not on it, but there is some room that if there are no surprises and the work that has been established comes in under budget or at the budget, there'd be some additional funding left to be able to address that.
Will it be done this year?
Again, depending on budget, depending on weather, hopefully we don't continue to get weather like we did today and rain and whatnot. But the season is a little bit late in starting, but they'll move along. It's a good company. The good news is this company that did win the bid has had good experience in the city, and so the hope is that they move quickly and stick to the budget and the schedule.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I do have also a question with communications from the managers regarding the subcommittee motions on June 25th by Councilor Martin with regard to the medical marijuana. The DPD have given us a report or recommendations. I want to thank them for that. First, the recommendation is to make no change to the existing zoning, actually to say, yes, rely on the DPH regulation because it's well regulated, well secure, and on top of that, that we, as a city, will issue special permit for the use of dispensaries and whatnot. The second recommendation was to do a temporary moratorium that the Attorney General have allowed the moratorium with the expiration date as late as June 30, 2014. That's the second option. The third option would be to consider adopting a revised permanent ordinance regulated medical marijuana and the cultivation. I would suggest, Mr. Mayor, that we take the second option, that is, since we do need more time to put together a moratorium so that give us time to prepare for a revised permanent ordinance to regulate this. But with that said, I'd like to hear a recommendation from Mr. Becky, because he's very well versed in this. But I say we need to take some step, and that for me personally, I would say take a temporary moratorium because the law said, the Attorney General already said that we have it till June 2014. That gives us time to put together a comprehensive revised a plant or ordinance. But with that said, I'd like to hear from the assistant city managers, Mr. Becky, what his thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. The issue of the legalization by ballot measure of medical marijuana has essentially created, coupled with the promulgation of regulations governing how medical marijuana will be implemented in the state by the state's Department of Public Health, have essentially created what I guess I would see as three categories of potential, I guess, land uses related to medical marijuana. One of those is what I think most people kind of view as what medical marijuana is all about, which is the dispensaries, which would be the facilities where patients who have prescriptions for medical marijuana could go to and have those prescriptions filled. That's where the marijuana products would be purchased. And that would, function as essentially a kind of a medical/retail type use. The second is the type of facility where the medical marijuana would be cultivated and processed, and that is a facility that would really have no public aspect of it whatsoever. No public access would be legal under the state regulations, and there would be virtually no indication on the exterior of the property that that was in any way related to medical marijuana. Those facilities, however, we do view, at least the Department of Planning and Development views, as potentially attractive economic development for the city, in that they will likely generate a substantial amount of tax revenue, as well as a comparatively large number of comparatively well-paying jobs that have minimal educational requirements attached to many of them, which may be attractive to Lowell residents. And given that there's a very little public profile to those facilities, we see those facilities, again, as having limited, if any, negative implications and a lot of potentially positive implications for the city. The third type of facility is really not so much a facility as the outcome of the law, which enables people who can define themselves and be approved by the state as having a hardship to cultivate their own marijuana, either themselves or a designated caregiver to them to cultivate their own medical marijuana. And the way this was enacted, it's in the state regulations, but it was actually in the ballot measure, which is why it's worded as such in the state regulations. One of the factors that would allow people to claim the hardship status, and most likely the one that will be used most frequently, is the lack of access to a dispensary facility. So those hardship cultivation, there's been extensive Attorney General rulings on a number of the bylaws that towns have attempted to enact in one way or another, either directly or indirectly, prohibiting or restricting the hardship cultivation in their communities, and every single one of those has been thrown out by the Attorney General. And so that seems to be something that we can't really regulate, but we can reduce the likelihood of in our city by perhaps having a dispensary somewhere either in the vicinity of Lowell or in the city of Lowell, that means that people could not make the claim that they wouldn't have access to one and therefore wouldn't get the hardship cultivation license. Now, it's ultimately, we're sort of looking for direction from the council as to how you would like us to proceed, whether you would like us to work with the law department to develop some form of moratorium that might apply to one or all of these types of uses. We also certainly can work. We believe the existing zoning is adequate, may not be the best tool, but it is adequate. I don't feel like we are lacking in regulation of these land uses, but it may be something that the council wants to regulate more specifically. And if so, we also can work, and I believe the memo details a number of areas that we may want to consider, the council may want to consider, should you choose the route of enacting something to regulate either now or at the conclusion of a moratorium period.
Councilor Noon.
Thank you, Mr. Becky. I appreciate it. I know that we cannot regulate it out. We have to preserve the intent of the voter. The voter want it, but that said, we want a balance in enacting an ordinance that protecting the safety and the well-being of the community. I think we do need time to, again, giving to the law department and or DPD to put together a comprehensive ordinance. That said, we need to make decisions and on taking one of those recommendations to start with. That being said, I would say the temporary moratorium is the way to go, because you have it till June 2014. And that would allow our department to work on the revised ordinance. So, and that just, I don't know whether or not we have to vote tonight or what we need to do, but I would, seek advice from my fellow councilor who've been here longer than I do. Thank you.
Councilor Lowell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Mr. Bakey. Listening to your comments a couple of minutes ago, the different types, there is one that you mentioned that's not a dispensary. It's the manufacturing. How big of a piece of land would you need?
Well, as I understand from speaking with a number of folks who are involved in this industry, they're not done outdoors, and I think that may be tied to the regulations for the security requirements that are attached to the regulations. They're actually done, it's done inside of a building. And generally it appears that the cultivation facilities are generally in the order of magnitude of a 20,000 or so square foot building, which is fairly common, fairly typical of the industrial areas of the city. Have a lot of buildings about that size, more or less.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. I brought this up at the subcommittee meeting because I did learn that a number of communities are enacting a moratorium. I think the only unknown at that time was the date that it was going to expire. So I believe then, as I believe now, that we should enact a temporary moratorium, specifically for many of the reasons that were outlined in this, in the memo. There are a number of specific items that Mr. Becky included that we do need to work on. So I'd make that in the form of a motion that we direct the city solicitor's office to draft a temporary ordinance and to expire, I guess, up to no later than next June of 2014. So we can make sure that we're adopting proper zoning codes and addressing all the issues that aren't addressed up to this point. It's such, the law is new, the regulations are new, and I think it would be prudent for us to delay this, to analyze it, to have our planning development department come up with appropriate areas if we have to do this, and apparently we do have to do it, but just to make sure that they're not sited or located in areas that are not appropriate. So I'd make that in the form of a motion.
Motion by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Noon. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Councilor Mendonça.
One of the items under information is from our Veterans Agent, Eric LaMarche, instructing us that the Veterans Memorial Committee requests that this be brought before the City Council for final approval. It's a request for a Veterans Memorial Square, and this is for a private in the Army who was killed in action in Italy in 1943, and certainly in my mind there's no one more deserving of the recognition, and also to recognize the sacrifice of the family. I would ask that we take this up separately in a roll call vote, that we approve this and request that they continue with the process of implementing it.
Right. Second.
Motion by Councilman Mendonça, second by Councilor Mercia. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy. Counselor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Laurie.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Thank you. Any further discussion under communications? Councilor Martin?
Just there's a memo about the website requesting a subcommittee meeting, and so I just asked that memo and report be referred to the technology subcommittee for a
Motion
future
to
subcommittee meeting.
Motion to refer the report to the Technology Subcommittee by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Any further discussion? I believe there's another. Councilor Mendonça?
Move approval of the communication.
Motion to accept and place on file. So moved by Councilor Mendonça, second by Councilor Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. We do have someone here from the university on item 13. I entertain a motion to suspend the rules to take it out of order. So moved by Councilor Mendonça, second by Councilor Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. A vote to authorize the city manager to enter into a license agreement with UMass Lowell to encroach upon city property for proposed UMass Lowell sign to be located on City of Lowell property. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council, vote. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a license agreement with the University of Massachusetts Lowell to encroach upon city property for a proposed University of Massachusetts Lowell sign to be located on City of Lowell property. What's the wish of the council?
Move to approve.
To approve by Councilor Martin, second by Councilor Mercia. Roll call, please.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy. Counselor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Laurie.
Yes.
That's 8 yeas.
Thank you. Next, we have the communication to reappoint Mr. Ben O'Para and Reverend Cecilio Hernandez to the Immigration Commission.
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Mendonça. Roll call, please.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy. Counselor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Laurie.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have a vote to apply, accept, expend a grant for a maximum of $121,600 for the Council on Aging. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council, vote. Authorizing the city manager on behalf of the City of Lowell to apply for, accept, and expend a grant from the Executive Office of Elder Affairs in the maximum amount of $121,600 for the continued employment of staff as well as funding of various supplies and equipment maintenance for use by the Council on Aging.
Move approval.
Move to approve by Councilor
Second.
Mercia, second by Councilor Laurie. Roll call, please.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy. Counselor Leahy. Counselor Laurie.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have an order for a 60-day trial. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Noon, second by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. In City Council order pursuant to Chapter 266 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts, concerning Section 266 thereof entitled Temporary Experimental Regulations. Temporary traffic regulations are hereby implemented for a period of 60 days. What's the wish of the council? Motion to approve by
Approve.
Councilor Mercia, second by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor? Excuse me, roll call, please.
Counselor Martin.
Yes.
Counselor Mendonça.
Yes.
Counselor Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nguyen.
Yes.
Counselor Elliott.
Yes.
Counselor Kennedy. Counselor Leahy.
Yes.
Counselor Laurie.
Yes.
That's 8 yeas.
Next, we have a constable bond for Emma Amaro for approval of the term January 4th, 2011 through January 7th, 2014. And one bond for Juan M. Jerez for approval for the term of January 4th, 2011 through January 7th, 2014. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move to approve by Council Elliott, seconded by Council Mendoza. Roll call, please.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mendoza.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy. Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Next, we have a communication from the city manager, request approval of out-of-state travel, one for the Department of Planning and Development and one for the Lowell Regional Wastewater Unit.
Motion to take them both together.
Motion to
and
take
move
the two
approval.
together
Second.
and to approve by Council Mercia.
Yes.
Seconded by Council Elliott. Roll call, please.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mendoza.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy. Counsel Leahy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
That's 8 yeas.
Next, we have reports, wire inspector report, National Grid underground electric conduit to feed the transformer at 65 Perkins Street. Motion to accept and adopt the accompanying order. So moved by Council Mendoza, seconded by Council Noon. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next report for National Grid Verizon. Relocate poles for the street corner surrounding at Broadway and Wilder Streets. Motion to accept and adopt the accompanying report. So moved by Council Mercia, seconded by Council Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next, we have under general petitions, one claim for property damage. Entertain a motion to refer to the Law Department for report and recommendation. So moved by Council Noon, seconded by Council Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Under motions, we have Councilor Mercia. Request the mayor continue the supported and approved motion to introduce and highlight new businesses before the city council. Seconded by Council Mendoza. Council Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some years ago, City Councilor Dan Tenza came up with a very simple but brilliant motion that was approved by the past council to highlight and bring before us in this chamber new businesses that were willing to take a risk, put their money on the table, and invest in the city that they felt would provide the American dream for them, and we obliged. Somehow, over the past few years, we've neglected to do that, and this motion asks that we resume and continue. There were a few businesses to have their grand opening. Some I could attend, while others I could not get away due to vacations for staff left us short of help. I would like to meet them and look forward to let the viewing public meet them as well. This is a good marketing tool for us as a council to show our support and encouragement to their new business. It only makes common sense, and I want to continue what we started. I have attended the grand opening of the Khmer Post USA last Thursday, and I asked our mayor, Patrick Murphy, to invite them, and he said he would do that at the next council meeting so that it would be put on the agenda. But I want those businesses that we overlook to come before us as well. Businesses such as the newly opened Electronic Horizon, 115 Merrimack Street, downtown Lowell, Plum Choice opening at Cross Point, Green Mango Fusion at 19 Hurd Street. I know that in the past, before the last 3 months, we had Sweet Lydia's on Merrimack Street, Little Delights, it's a cupcake place at 144 Merrimack Street, and Cravings has been sold, and the name will probably be changing, and there'll probably be a grand opening there. But what businesses we have coming to our city should not be a secret, should not be kept to ourselves, but shared with the whole community. And I would like to meet these people, and I'm sure the public will do as well. So I think it's a motion that it shouldn't be forgotten, and I think it's a good idea to revive it. That's all.
Council Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I like the motion. The only question I have, and I was going to bring forward a company in September who, just to give them a citation, who've been in business in the city for 30 years, but we can include businesses here, long-term businesses. We've had some companies in Lowell have been here 100 years.
That's right.
And I was going to bring one in September for after 30, so that was the only question. Thank you.
Yep.
Hopefully, they're all long-term, but I'd ask for permission to speak from the chair
Yes, go ahead.
Because the motion is addressed to myself. So moved by Councilor
Yes.
Mercia, second by Councilor Mendoza. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. As it is addressed to me, I did look up the history of the motion by Councilor Tenzar, then Councilor Tenzar, and I certainly support it, and he had actually addressed it to the city manager. I think it makes more sense in terms of logistics. The Economic Development Office are the people that contact us when there's any kind of ribbon cutting in the city, and I think it makes sense that they coordinate it with the businesses at that time, because while it may be, I guess, a benefit to the businesses to come before the council, it might also be a kind of a hindrance to their own business during the operating hours. You never know. So I think it's up to the Economic Development Office to coordinate with those businesses, and then certainly go through us to put it on the agenda. So I would just offer a modest amendment to it, that it be referred to the city manager as the first motion had.
But you're not opposed, Mr. Mayor, for them to come and give it us?
No, that's what I
And
just,
giving them 5 minutes of our time to them, right?
that's what I just stated.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I know that they probably couldn't come when we ask them, but it's up to them to decide. Maybe they don't want to come here, that's fine. But I think we have an obligation to at least give them 5 minutes of our time for the viewing public, so.
Sure. All I'm saying is it's more appropriate to have it referred to the city manager, where his economic development team can coordinate with the businesses better.
Yes,
to have
that's right. I don't care as long as, and it will be someone in the planning department. I did speak to Maria Dickinson about my motion and asked her if she had a problem with it. She was adaptable to it and thought it was a great idea. So it's not like I'm deciding that it's something I say should be done. It's something that I asked the proper department what they thought of it, and they thought it was something we should do.
Sure. Councilor New.
Thank you, Mayor. It is a great motion, doing a little more to what we've done, not just acknowledge them, and having our Economic Development Office, which they done a fantastic job. They were there at the events that Councilor Mercia spoke of, the ribbon cutting for the Khmer Post, that we, have them being the conduit of our city and requesting all those businesses newly open and/or, as Councilor Lowell suggests, those been around for a long time, to coordinate with them if they want to come. But you got to understand too is that a lot of these businesses, if it's restaurants, they wouldn't come because they would have to close their business for that night to come. So, so we need to have our Economic Development Office, who have done a great job to coordinate it with the manager and the mayor, and I'm pleased that the mayor was also there at the event, and to hear that his continuing support of this is a great thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Councilor Mercia, request the city manager have proper department explain the procedure for how bills are activated after the permits are issued. Second by Councilor Mendoza. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you. First off, let me just say I'm not going to repeat anybody's name here tonight, and I'm not going to talk about an address here, so nobody has to get nervous about it. But during the budget hearing time, Councilor Marty Laurie was remarking as to the lower than usual permit fees and income generated by these fees. And I could not have agreed with him more, and I tried to give my reasoning because earlier in the day I had been made aware of a property owner who was suspected of tying in a sewer to the city service, and I was awaiting to get some answers, only to be told at the time not to comment that it may be in litigation, but it wasn't in litigation. And on further investigation, I had noticed that 2 pieces of property were not tied in, one as much as 8 years. And I'm not going to say it's not about who are they or where are they, it's not about that. But I found and was told by a particular department that bills for the property in question were all up to date. and I asked what bills, because I asked, are they up to date? I was told that the water, sewer, and trash were up to date, and that was news to me because I found out that only the property tax bill was up to date, that they didn't pay sewer or water at all. So I wondered how that was possible. So shortly thereafter, I was told by another employee in another department that I should not be allowed access to information as it was not public record, only property tax and not sewer or water. So I question, why do we need read who's delinquent in the water rates in the paper? If it's not public record, once a year they put a full-page list of all the people who owe back taxes and are delinquent in their water bill. If it's not public record, why are we putting it publicly in the paper? How is an elected official able to follow up and get to the bottom of an issue if I'm getting a roadblock at each turn of the event here? Somehow in the law department, someone in the law department said that because a permit is pulled and paid does not mean that the work was actually done. In this case, they may have pulled a permit to tie in a city sewer, but they may have changed their mind. Now, this scenario is completely true. I could come in City Hall, pull a permit for a deck, and change my mind. But the point is, who checks on seeing if the work was actually done? And how often is someone apt to come all the way down here, pull a permit, pay the money, and change their mind, especially for a sewer tie-in that costs thousands of dollars, and the permit fees are expensive, to only change their mind? So the motion states, have the proper department explain the procedure for how bills are activated after permits are issued. What is the follow-up? And I want to just say for the record, I don't blame this current crew that's in place at this department for this. The motion relates to years ago. I want to know that this is not happening today or in the future. If Jane and Joe Q Public are paying their fair share, then so should everybody else. We that are doing the right thing should not be subsidizing for those that are not and fails to obey the law and cheat the system at our expense. That's the gist of this particular motion, that I want to know what is the policy, what is the procedure when permits are pulled. I'm sure probably they're checking them today. I don't know that. They should be. Evidently they weren't, because 2 people slipped through the cracks, and I'll get into it in my next motion here. So that's the gist of this motion here.
Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor? Councilor Laurie?
Just one question, and I'd ask Councilor Mercia first if I could add this in. I've been starting to look into the process of people who pull permits for, say, fire alarms. I think it's probably not burglar, just fire alarms. They're not tied into the city. They're the type that go off at the house and you rely on a neighbor. From what I understand, some of these people are being billed by the city as if their calls go directly to the police, the police department. Now, I question whether they should be paying that, because we're not responding to those calls unless it's a regular call, as if you saw a neighbor break in. So I don't know if I should put a motion in, or can I throw this in with this one? Basically how bills are activated after permits. They pull the permits, someone puts in the fire alarm, but yet they're being billed as everyone else is, whose calls go to the fire department, and they're not. I don't think they should be. I don't think these people should be billed, because their alarms go off at the home, and that's it. Now, I can see how this happens. I pull a permit to put a fire alarm in my house, and automatically you assume it goes to the police station, but they don't all do that. Some of them stay at the home. Can I throw this in, or should I
Yes,
put?
I don't have a problem.
Mr. Bakey, would that be okay? That'd be great. I've received a few calls on that now. Thank you.
I'm not sure it's directly related to Council Mercia's motion.
Only because it says how,
I
the procedure
understand
for
it
how
says-
bills are activated after permits are issued. So they get the permit, but the bills are being activated as if the calls are going in. I can put another motion in. I just thought I'd piggyback it if I could.
I think it might be wise to
Separate.
submit
I'll take
a
that
new motion,
suggestion then.
because I think it is substantively different from Council Mercy's motion.
Okay, I'll do that, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Any further discussion on Council Mercy's motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Council Mercia, request the Law Department provide an update regarding the motion adopted on June 11th, 2013 to abandon Worcester Road. Second by Council Noon. Council Mercia.
I think we skipped my third motion, but if you want, I'll go to my fourth.
Oh, excuse me.
All right. On June 11th, I made a motion to abandon Worcester Road. It's a paper street that runs from Andover Street to East Merrimack Street between Surrey Lane and Rivercliff Road. If the street was abandoned, it would keep any further development off that road from occurring, and would protect the integrity of the neighborhood, and I'm sure that the 16 abutters feel the same as I do, but the motion was approved and referred to the Law Department, but I haven't heard any word on the status of the progress, if there's any. This is what this motion is asking for, just an update on, can it be done, can it not be done, will it be done, and that's all I just wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Council Mercia, request the city manager have follow-up checking on building, sewer tie-in permits, etc., against the proper issuing of appropriate bills, and what policy is in place for work done and no appropriate bill is issued. Second by Council Noon. Council Mercia.
And this motion asks the city manager to have the follow-up checking on building, sewer, tie-in permits, et cetera, against the proper issuing of an appropriate bill. But what's just as important with this whole process is what steps are we taking when we uncover that a permit was pulled, in this case, 2005, 8 years ago, and no bill was ever issued? When it was proven without a doubt that the two pieces of property were in fact tied into city sewer lines, I was informed that there is good news here today. These two pieces of property will now be paying their sewer bill, and I said to myself, big deal. What about the years that they got away with not paying for the tie-in? What policy is in place to get restitution? I'm not even asking for, I'll give a doubt here that maybe it's the fault of the city, I don't know. I'm not asking for fines here, but something should be done. 8 years where we paid a sewer bill and others didn't, that isn't right. How do we make it right for the taxpayer that had to pay a little more for those that got away with cheating the city? And what do we say now? Well, now that they'll start paying, well, I don't buy that. So I want an answer to my motion that states, what policy is in place for work done and no appropriate bill is issued? And if there is no policy, then let's make one. What I uncovered was stealing at its best. Are there any more properties out there that are getting city services and not paying for it? A side note to all of this is that I was asked to follow through on this issue because one particular department was not getting nowhere and no answers for 3 weeks, and they asked me for help. If this is taking place here, this is wrong in the city, and I hope that you are aware of what I'm telling you. One department needs to help the other. If after all the digging, I learned that a permit was pulled and no work was done, well, what would have satisfied me was if at the end of this case, if they told me that there was the permit was pulled, but they didn't tie in, that would have been one thing. That would have been fine, but we learned differently. And I was treated when I was calling the different departments as if I was interfering. I was just trying to do a job. And I don't know how you can do a job if nobody's willing to give you any answers. I don't know how I could have gotten to the bottom of it without the information that I uncovered. More cooperation needs to be done and given. Each city department needs to be working in harmony with others, or we will be having counselors at next budget time inquiring as to why are the revenues getting so low? And that's the gist of this motion. We gotta have cooperation here. And I'm not doing my job by interfering and trying to, cause trouble. I'm just trying to do what people have asked me to do. How can you help me get answers to this? And I thought that I did that. But I went through hoops to get it, I'll tell you that. And it shouldn't have been that way. That's my...
Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Next motion by Councilor Laurie, request the city council name a basketball court at Bowers Complex, Highland Park, in honor of Michael John Prestipino, Jr., Seconded by Councilor Leahy. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion really speaks for itself. Michael Prestipino lost his life. Well, he passed away. He was involved in an accident. He passed away a short time after that. And I've been approached. Michael was a great guy by friends and family. If we could honor Michael by naming a basketball court for him at the Bowers Complex at Highland Park. That's where Michael grew up. He has his friends. And I want to thank State Rep Kevin Murphy. That complex is all being redone now through the efforts of Representative Murphy, and I even called Representative Murphy and asked him before I did this out of respect where his office is so influential in getting the park redone, and he was 100% behind the idea. As I said, Michael left us very young. He was the son of Mickey and Gail Prestipino, and he leaves his wife, Diana, his daughter Julia, and his brother David. And I just asked that one basketball court be named for Michael J. Prestipino. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this motion? Councilor Mercia.
I believe I'd like to ask the maker of the motion if we could have a roll call vote, and then we could refer it to the Board of Parks, because they supersede anything that we do here.
Yes, thank you. I think they meet next Wednesday night, and we have a joint motion going next week for Keith Rudy. And if we take a roll call vote, that should be able to get on the agenda for next Wednesday night. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion on the motion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Madonza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes?
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Leahy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
8 yeas.
Thank you. Next, I have several motions if Councilor Mendoza will take the chair.
Motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager post municipal candidate campaign finance reports on city website and have the law department draft more comprehensive finance regulations, including pay-to-play ordinance rendering individuals, companies, or organizations that donate above specified amounts ineligible for financial relationships with the city. Second by Councilor Martin.
I'm opposed.
Opposed, Councilor Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is really aimed at just ensuring that our government is what people expect it to be. You know, there's nothing that really would prohibit us from including municipal campaign finance reports on our website so they're more easily accessible to the people that would be most interested in them. I think we could also do a better job with the school committee's information, which isn't required to be posted on the state website, but is required to be kept up to date on ours, but isn't. The Supreme Court has made a couple of different decisions, including back to the 1970s, Buckley v. Vallejo and most recently Citizens United decision, which I think really equates money with political speech. And that's a different discussion. But I think that we can implement a kind of ordinance that that preserves the right to a kind of speech, if you accept that, at the same time ensures that that speech isn't traded for anything else other than to express support for a particular candidate. And a number of municipalities have taken the steps to implement those ordinances so that you don't have people who have contracts with the city or who have some kind of business relationship with the city that are able to sort of buy influence among a number of different legislators in the legislative body. And I think that's important, not just for the strict sort of, as it says, pay to play, but just also for the appearance of a conflict, which I think is important for the public to have, that they realize that everything is above board. And so this is a simple motion calling for that to be looked at by the law department and to come back with a proposal that we can actually vote on. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Look, I don't have any problem putting a direct link on the city's website if it's not accessible or easily accessible for, from the Office of Political Campaign and Finance. If people want to look right at their campaign finance reports, it's available. It's available right on their site. It's actually very usable. I think the idea of creating another whole new level of bureaucracy to start tracking council candidates' contributions, which is done by the state. I have no problem. Go look at all the reports, all the donations, all the people who gave me donations, all of my colleagues, well, with the exception of one colleague, which is the maker of the motion. I find it hypocritical of Mayor Murphy to want, and talking about transparency and putting more information and pay to play, or, it makes no sense when he himself has not itemized one of his donations since 2009, since 2011. So I'm kind of confused where you're coming from on you want to make things more accessible and prevent, any conflict, which I don't think this is a whole state bureaucracy responsible for this, and they're vigilant, and you have to have, and the cities, you have to file, every time you get a donation, you're supposed to file, and there are limits, if you have a $10 fundraiser, you don't have to put down every $10 contribution that people make. But if you get 100 or 250 or 500, you have to put who it was received from, what the purpose is. So I don't have any problem with, with putting that information and getting more information out to the people in the city. That's fine. But I think the notion that people in this city are accepting donations for access. First of all, we vote on very, very few contracts. In fact, we're not even allowed to vote on one of the biggest contracts in the city, a $25 million waste management contract. So I just find it very, disingenuous. And where does it stop? He says corporations, businesses. What about, what about people in the unions? What if they want to make a donation? Are they prohibited from doing it? People that are board members, we have lawyers. They're businesses, and if they, are they prohibited from doing business or in the city? It doesn't make much sense to me. We still want people to run for government. You still have to raise money. And when you have to disclose the information that you get. And I've done it since I have been here. I'll continue to do it. I itemize checks that are less than 50 that we don't even have to, but I think it's important to do it. So, I guess we have to practice what we preach, and I don't know why you didn't put your donations. You say you didn't accept donations, but it's part of the campaign report, both in 2009 and 2011. So, if this is to create another job for somebody to go and start tracking campaign finance information, I think that's a waste of taxpayers' money when we have a state bureaucracy, campaign and finance, that's they're on it. So I think that we should be focusing resources on drug addiction and the drug problems we have and gang violence and those things, and let the states do it. Let the states do its job, because I think it does very well, and I think members of this council report everything.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Vice Chair. I understand the reasoning behind, to a point, this motion, but it doesn't limit who the individuals are. We have people running for state office, federal office, city office, county office. Are we going to restrict what they can do here in the city when they run statewide? That's the problem I have. I don't raise a lot of money. I don't need to. The other thing I think this does, and it gives the appearance that there's legitimate business people in this city donating money for contracts with the city. I don't believe that to be true. I look across this board, and as Councilor Elliott said, we don't vote on, all of the contracts that come through. But I look across this board, I trust every member here to vote their conscience. I don't think there's anyone on this council that can be bought. That said, my major concern with this motion is that there are candidates who run for state and federal offices, and how this would affect those campaigns, how that would affect the law department and the city of Lowell drawing an ordinance that goes above state law that works with candidates outside the city. I think that could be a real potential problem. But that's where my problem lies with this. I do understand the reasoning behind the motion, but I don't think I can support it because, as I said, there are other candidates who run in this city and how it affects them. Thank you.
I did take it that the motion was for municipal candidates, not for statewide or federal candidates. Councilor Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. We have a state entity that overlooks this. It's called the Office of Campaign and Political Finance, and anybody that wants to go into that can see the transparency. I have included everything I possibly can, even though I'm understanding that the State Ethics Commission is probably, looking at my papers because they did call someone today. Maybe if you dig into people not paying their sewer bill, you do get reprimanded through Ethics Commission violations or whatever, but be that as it may, I do the best that I can, but it says that request the city manager post municipal candidate campaign finance reports. I think the manager has enough on his plate without looking to see who's donating to me. But if he refers that to MIS, I thought we had Moran Fernandez come up before the budget hearing and ask for more help, because I don't think that he's here because he has a lot of time in his hands. So I really would like to take a roll call and have individuals vote on this. I don't support it. Thank you.
Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Like all the council here, I too filed my paperwork with the state. As you get donated, you file with the state. And I don't think, for me at least, to have city have a link to the city website, which we filed already, so go ahead. This is my response to it. And in filing to the city website, I'm sure that it doesn't take much time to do that, or resource to do that. That said, look, I understand the state doing it. We have to do it with the state. If I have to do it again with the city, I do it again. If I have to do it with somebody else, I do it again. There's nothing for me to hide. So therefore, the second, the third step, it wouldn't hurt. It may be a way of us being more responsible and being more transparent, I guess. I'm not saying that we're not, but I don't mind doing it. Thank you.
Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I don't think it takes significant resources or staff time to simply provide a link to what's already on the state website. So if people want to divide the question, that's fine with me. The second part of it is really, it's not talking about what's happening now or what's happened in the past. It's just an attempt to try and prevent something from happening in the future. You could have a situation where, although we don't vote necessarily on some contracts, as city councilors, there's an influence that is exerted on the city manager. But on the other side, you could have a city manager in the future who used the contracts and the use of donations to exert influence on the council. So it can work both ways. And this is really just to ensure that people aren't donating solely to buy influence. It's a very straightforward measure. It's not suggesting that that's what people do now or what they've done in the past, just that they don't do it in the future. That, things that come before the council where people have a financial interest in it, that we really shouldn't be voting on if we have some kind of financial connection to whoever the proponent or whoever the petitioner is. And as for other comments made earlier, I just refer people to the state website where everything has been, as other councilors have said, properly reported. Thank you.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you. I said I was opposed, and I'm opposed primarily because I don't think this is necessary. I think this is a heavily regulated area under state law, and people are required to comply with very detailed and extensive regulations. The website that the state agency has is very user-friendly. You can search by candidate, you can search by donor. There are all sorts of things that make it user-friendly. So to have to do something similar, I don't see the point. One more click of the computer is maybe not a lot of work, but I think it entangles us with something that's perfectly well-functioning the way it is.
Councilor Laurie. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I did read this, and it does say post-municipal candidates, and I do understand that. But as you go farther down, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, it says, ask the law department to draft more comprehensive financial regulations, including pay-to-play. Now, when I read that, how does the law department do that and restrict us and not other people running in the city? That's my point. I think it'd be very difficult for the law department to restrict us against any other candidate running for any other office. That was my only point. As I said, I understand the reasoning behind it. I do agree with Councilor Martin once again that this is a heavily regulated industry, but I do stand by my remarks. When I go farther down the pay-to-play, I don't know how the law department would come up with any regulations that would restrict a council candidate as opposed to those running for state offices, and that was my concern. Thank you.
Councilor Nunn.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Would it be possible for us to have, for the MIS department to link make a direct link to the state, and so that those who want to access, instead of create another piece of it, that they can link to the state if they want to. If they don't know how to get directly to the state, they can just get to the city website, and there they can find a link to the state to find those informations that they needed as to who donate to whom for what purposes.
Councilor Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I'm not computer suave, okay? I'm really not. But there's a button on your screen that says favorite. If you want to click the Office of Political Finance and add it to your favorite, you just press favorite and it's there all the time. I don't see the big deal with hooking it into the City of Lowell website. I don't think the website is about campaign finance reform or laws or whatever. Roll call.
Move the
question.
Second.
Yep, there's been a request for roll call. Councilor Elliott, do you have anything further?
No, I just second and move the question.
Oh, very good. All right. Roll call.
Counsel Martin.
No.
Counsel Madonza.
No.
Counsel Mercier.
No.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
No.
Counsel Kennedy. Counsel Leahy.
No.
Counsel Laurie.
No.
2 yeas.
Motion is defeated. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager report on parking arrangements with school department in the context of net minimum spending requirements and consider transportation demand management plan to provide equity and incentives for alternative transportation. Second by Councilor Martin. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. In our budget discussions with the school department, it came to light that some part of the schools, the city's net minimum spending requirements for the schools come out of the parking subsidy for mainly the teachers at the high school, where other employees of the city don't necessarily pay for parking. I think that to bring the system into a bit of fairness, that you could have a kind of program which allowed for a travel stipend or a parking stipend, where people could be essentially encouraged to use alternative transportation, whether it be by bus, foot, or bike, or even carpooling to get to work, so that the parking demand in and around downtown isn't taxed as much, but you still have the city recognizing that there is some value to the parking that's given freely, and also that there is there's more of a fairness to how we allow for parking for all our employees. Thank you.
Councilor Leahy.
Sure. If the maker of the motion could explain a little bit more, because I really don't understand. The high school's the city takes a check from the school department for the high school parking. So to make it fair, we just wouldn't charge them we wouldn't take that check from the school department.
Mayor Murphy.
That's what really should be done, but otherwise, I've had this discussion with the vice chair, it'd probably just go into maintenance of effort, but.
Well, that's that's one option, but I think what happens is the money is actually charged against a parking enterprise, so that there's the funds go from the school department to the parking enterprise, but it's charged off as net minimum spending. So that's certainly one way to get towards a level of fairness. The other is to recognize that what the city provides in terms of parking to all its employees also has value, and that you could actually work through a kind of program to manage transportation and parking that incentivizes coming to work in different ways other than by car or solely by your own car.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager report on potential of a mixed-use 2 for Lowell program in partnership with the LDFC and the Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership to provide more affordable live-work opportunities for emerging entrepreneurs, seconded by Council Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 for Lowell program was something that Council Martin has really argued for, both from its inception, but also for greater funding for it, because it has been a successful program. But one of the elements of that program is that it's not intended for people to start up any kind of business enterprise. But there are situations, I think, throughout the city, there are properties throughout the city that lend themselves really to commercial enterprises on the bottom floor with residential space above. And the idea is that if you have the two together, that the owner-occupied space is better able to maintain and keep safe the commercial enterprise, as well as the commercial enterprise ensuring that the owner is able to better meet all of his or her loan requirements and make the payments on the upstairs. So it's something just to look at, explore whether or not we can create a kind of program out of what's already there without crossing the sort of legal lines and guidelines of the current program, but putting together a more coherent effort so that people might be able to take advantage of the two.
Councilor Elliott.
Mr. Bakey is here. Could I please ask him a question on this? What is the current zone? What zone would allow something like this to take place? Is there one?
Actually, we have quite a few zoning districts. We have several zoning districts that are identified explicitly as mixed-use districts. Districts like certainly areas of our downtown, if there were a appropriately sized building for this could qualify. Certainly all the neighborhood business districts, we primarily allow for commercial uses, but generally speaking allow for one residential unit that is thought of as either a caretaker or a mom and pop owner's unit above a building that has a commercial unit use on the ground floor. So there's actually quite a few areas of the city where something like this would be legal under zoning, certainly.
So to the maker of the motion, if this is already in place, what are we trying to change? Are you trying to expand a typical 2-family area zone just for 2-family to expand it into one of these zones that Mr. Bakey just described?
Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The point is, it's not already in place, which is why I'm bringing it up. The current 2 for Lowell program is solely for owner-occupied housing, and you're not allowed to, if I understand it correctly, you're not allowed to give the funding towards a commercial enterprise. But if you brought in another partner like the LDFC, you might be able to have a coordinated program that recognizes how each, both the residential and commercial, could work together to make it a more successful to make it a more successful project.
Mr. Baker.
If I may just clarify what I think is perhaps a misunderstanding here. I believe what I was responding to in Councilor Elliott's question was a question about zoning. And what I believe Mayor Murphy is talking about is about financial incentives, and the answer would be slightly different to the question, depending which we're talking about.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Councilor Mercer.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. This is rather a confusing topic, and I know that neighborhood groups probably would like to weigh in on this, considering that zoning is all over the city here. I'd like to refer this to the zoning subcommittee to get more information if people want to understand what this motion is.
Motion by Councilor Mercer to refer this to the zoning subcommittee.
Before the motion's made, I would like to weigh in on the intent behind the motion. I mean,
All right, we have a motion and a second by Councilor Elliott. Mayor Murphy.
Sure. I mean, the motion doesn't call for any kind of zoning change. The motion is for, as Mr. Bakey said, financial incentives. So I don't see what you would talk about or discuss at the zoning subcommittee. This is something that would provide incentives to a potential business owner who would be willing to live above their workspace that's allowed within the current zoning. And, I don't know if anybody else has other questions before they start making amendments to the motion, I'd be happy to answer them.
Councilor Martin.
Right, on the face of this, it has nothing to do with zoning. It's as the mayor described, this is basically a loan program or some sort of financial incentive program for a smaller operation. I mean, my grandparents had a variety store, from the 40s to the 70s in this city, and they lived in an apartment right behind the store. And there are dozens and dozens of similar examples. This isn't allowing for a zoning expansion of mixed uses. Some of those zones do exist still today, and this is a financial incentive program. Whether it makes sense or not, who knows where it would be funded, who knows, but all this is calling for is a report. So I don't think it has anything to do with zoning. I oppose the motion to send it to the zoning subcommittee because I don't think it has anything to do with zoning. So I support the original motion.
Councilor Noon.
The zoning is already there. I can tell you half a dozen to a dozen of businesses who in the Middlesex Street that basically the owner of the business downstairs, the jewelry store, live upstairs. They don't get any incentive from the city. This actually is going to certainly help potential future homeowner who like to, get some assistance from the city, live upstairs and open a small businesses downstairs. Certainly help. In the zoning area that's already allowed, it's not going to change any zoning. They're not going to do it in a single family, of course.
Councilor Mercer.
Well, I understand your point, but it was at the request of a neighborhood group leader that asked that it go to the zoning subcommittee. I don't care if it goes to the moon personally, but that's what I was doing. I was complying with a request from a constituent. But now, let me bring you back to a lot of times when we make decisions and we bypass the feelings of those very people that these type of motions are gonna play role to in their neighborhoods. So I don't care if you send it to the neighborhood subcommittee or whatever, but I think before decisions are made, people have questions, not just us. I mean, I don't know all their questions, and so maybe there's questions out there as to how are you gonna what is this gonna be about? What type of businesses are we talking about? Where are they gonna be? Will it be next door to me or whatever? I don't know. I'm just trying to comply with the wishes of neighborhood groups who sometimes feel like they'd like to have an impact and input in it, and they just not included. And so that's why if you wanted to forget about it and get a report, fine. But I thought out of respect for the neighborhood groups that perhaps they wanted to know a little bit more about it, that they had questions that I didn't have. After all, we're impacting their neighborhood if it decides that this is something we want to do. That's all. If you don't want to include them, then fine, then don't.
Council Lowry. Thank you. Yeah, I'm looking at this. I actually like the idea the more as I hear the mayor talk about it. I know when Councilor Martin first ran, he came up with 2 for Lowell. Matter of fact, I worked on his campaign, and I thought it was a great idea by the councilor at the time, councilor-to-be. And I think all that the mayor is really trying to do now is instead of having a 2-family, you'd have a business with a home upstairs or an apartment upstairs. The only question I have really for the mayor, if someone wanted to buy a piece of property and there was a business opportunity downstairs, would they have to own the business or could they rent it out to someone? That might be the difference between someone really investing in the neighborhood. I really have very little talent. So I would buy the building and I might live upstairs. But as long as the business is within the zoning of that area, under this, could I rent out to someone? Mayor Murphy. Because I think that would really help some of the neighborhoods too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on how this is, if it's all crafted and guidelines are put in place, but I think the intent behind it is for entrepreneurs who are wanting to start up a business to also be able to live upstairs and do so affordably, so that the initial costs to both buying a house but also to starting up a business are defrayed by the combined program. This is meant to impact neighborhoods. It's meant to impact neighborhoods positively, to look at potential properties throughout the city that aren't filled because it is a property that might not necessarily be filled easily, because you might have people looking for housing and you might have people looking for commercial space but don't want the two together. So it's trying to fill some of the vacant properties throughout the city. It's not an end around neighborhood groups. It's entirely basically attempting to fund what's currently allowed within the current zoning. And so to that I would just say that the concerns I think are misinformed.
Councilor Lowry. Thank you. I'm going to support it because I look forward to that report. And as I said, I think the mayor's on to maybe a good idea. Someone could buy the property, fix it up, live upstairs, and have a business. But they also might be able to rent it out to someone. But I think it's, I'd like to see the report. I'm going to support the motion. Councilor Elliott.
Is there a potential source of funding from or through the LDFC? Is it city money or grant money that's given to the LDFC to manage, or is this a separate pool of private money to both the Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership or the LDFC? Do we know?
Mayor Murphy.
I imagine that would be placed in the report.
Well, I would thought that maybe we would have some idea if potential funding is even available if we're going to pursue this. So you don't have any idea whether there's any money for this?
I know that there, in the past, the money has been given through the LDFC to support businesses within the downtown in some neighborhoods. And I know that the Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership currently has the program that I just alluded to. So there may be the potential, and this is to get the report to say whether there is or not.
Councilor Elliott.
So are those monies used or received by both of those entities? Was that part of the consolidated plan funding? No. block grant,
If there's
block
no
grant
objection,
money,
Mr. Bakie, if you have an answer
home
to that
funds.
question.
Well, the Merrimack, both of those organizations have money from a number of different sources that they utilize for programs that are generally in support of a lot of the city's policies. With respect to the Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership, they assist the city in administering the 2 for Lowell program, as well as the city's first-time homebuyer down payment assistance program, both of which are funded through federal home funds, which are part of the consolidated plan. No city general fund funds are able to be used for either of these purposes, because it would essentially be the use of general fund money for the benefit of a particular property owner. So that's really not used today, nor would it be able to be used in response to this request. With respect to the LDFC, they have a pretty broad menu of different types of programs, some of which, like the energy loan program that they have or the Downtown Venture Fund, involve a pooling of federal grant resources that flowed through the city, along with a fair amount of, a very significant amount of contributions from the local lenders who in this city have traditionally been very supportive of these types of efforts. But the LDFC also has their own development fund and supports investments in a number of economic development initiatives using their own resources, which are not city consolidated plan resources or any other. It obviously, if this motion is approved, presume it would end up likely going to our department. We would have some discussions with both of those organizations and explore what's feasible, and obviously look forward to reporting back to the council.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. That's the answer to my question. I wasn't looking at city funds. I knew that wasn't the case, but I knew there were consolidated funds, federal grants that come to the city that go to support programs. So, thank you.
All right, on the motion, substitute motion to refer
No,
to the
I'll
zoning.
withdraw it.
All right, withdraw by the maker of the motion, and does this?
Of course.
I concur, okay. Back to the original motion by Mayor Murphy. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager work to improve pedestrian and cyclist access to LRTA terminal through cleared sidewalks, safer crossing, improved street and underpass lighting on Gorham Street, and working with the LRTA to identify a safe entry point from Chelmsford Street. Seconded by Councilor Mercier. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. As we try to become a more walkable and biker-friendly city, which includes connections to public transit, I think it's important to make sure that those connections are actually there. There are a couple of access points to the LRTA terminal, Gallagher Terminal. On the most extreme points, there's an access from Chelmsford Street, which is not currently open to pedestrians and cyclists at the moment. But I think that there could be a path if the LRTA worked with the city on it to be able to provide access from there. The second part is really from the Gorham Street, which during the winter is very hard to access because of a lack of snow removal. There's a stretch of state land along Gorham Street that just very rarely is cleared, so that you often see a number of people out in the street walking to and from the Gallagher Terminal. But also, right now, during this season, we have quite a bit of overgrowth of shrubs and vegetation from the adjoining properties that make the sidewalks impassable. On top of that, you have a lack of lighting under the Gorham Street underpass, where the Lowell connector passes over Gorham Street, or Thorndike, depends on where you are. And so there are a couple different ways I think that you could make the LRTA more accessible, and I'd like to see that we explore those. Thank you.
Council Leahy.
Thank you. I think along with this motion too, Highland Street, you get everybody and their brother parking on Highland Street. And that needs to stop. It's not fair to the neighbors. It limits the parking to the school department. I think that should be part of the plan too. And also, are you speaking Thorndike Street or Gorham Street?
Thorndike, it runs into Gorham.
'Cause I don't think there's a sidewalk under the underpass or under the overpass, or whatever we want to call it, but
There is a sidewalk there, yeah.
is there underneath?
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't seem very wide. Okay, but if we can include the parking on Highland Ave, or Highland Street, because those people are just congesting that area. So that should be part of the plan too, if we could. Thank you.
There's no objection from the maker of the motion. And so, Council Lowry.
Thank you, I can't support that at all. The school department has plenty of parking. They have the parking in the front, and they have a huge parking lot in the back if they wish to use it. I grew up in that neighborhood. There's a lot of apartments there. And yes, they do park on the street, but they have no place else to go. The courthouse is over there. They use South Street a lot, but I think they're sent over to Highland Street at some points also. I know the funeral home, Johnny McDonough, allows the courts to use his parking lot when there's a major case. So there's something going on. Johnny will work with the courts to do that, use his parking lot. But as far as the people who live on Highland Ave, there's probably 12 apartment buildings, 38 and 40 in the back. Then you have the people who live on Highland Street itself. Many of them have apartments, and there is a shortage of. I just can't do that to the people in that neighborhood. They're residents, they pay taxes, and unfortunately, that's what they have for parking, for better or worse. But the school department does have plenty of parking in the back.
Council Leahy.
Just, are you on my amendment? Yeah. Okay, during the day, those people aren't home, so the people. I have no idea where they are. Right, but during the day, because that's where I got my information from, because I work over there, and the people tell me that during the day, they don't have a place to park because everybody's parking along the side of the school department, and they see them get out of the car at 7:30 in the morning and walk over to the terminal. So they don't have parking, and they would like people not to park there that are going to the terminal. And I'm sure the reason if we had residential stickers or something, but that whole side gets congested every day by people taking the train. And that's where I'm coming from. I'd like to free it up for the people in the neighborhood. They'd like to have it open. I could live with a residential parking program over there. I can see Councilor Leahy's point. As I just said, the courthouse, people will park there at times because of lack of parking. And I'm sure there are people at the train station who will park there because they don't want to pay the additional fees. And I'm also sure there's people working downtown who will park there to save the $40. So if it looks to be residential in nature, that I can support. I just don't want to see the people on the street lose their parking.
Councilor Mercer.
Councilor Leahy's absolutely right, because people, in an effort to save a buck, are parking right on that street, absolutely, because they're coming on to the other side, and they're parking on Summer Street in the court, in the sheriff's place, and they're leaving their cars there, and they're taking off, but they're not doing it now, because when you have a uniformed officer telling them you're not parking here, they're not parking there, so of course they're going to the other side. That's what's happening in that area.
Councilor Lowry.
You might just want to extend the back Central Street neighborhood parking program, if we could, over to that area. I'm sure John's right that people are parking there to save money to go to the trains, and I won't go into that again. but they do have a parking program in Back Central. Maybe it's time to look into expanding it a little bit farther out.
All right, all those in favor of the amended motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager develop plan to increase the visibility and walkability of the Western Canal Walkway from the Boulevard to Broadway and report on the status of the Northern Canal Walkway. Seconded by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. This is somewhat related to the last motion in that we should be increasing our connections throughout the neighborhood for pedestrians and cyclists. This is really to get a better handle on the Western Canal Walkway and provide more of the sense of a continuous walkway from the Northern Canal Walkway across the boulevard all the way over to Broadway Street. Because some places have crosswalks, some places don't, some have openings for handicap access, some don't. And so to be able to have a consistent and clear pathway across, I think would improve the connection there, and also potentially slow some of the traffic down on Broadway Street that goes in towards the acre. Also, just to get a report on the status of the Northern Canal Walkway, which, although it's posted as being open from, I think, May 15th to September or October 15th, I think it is, hasn't been open. And I don't see what the point of a walkway is if it's never open. So I'd like to get an update on that. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Okay, Councilor Leahy.
Wanted to add one quick thing, because this happened today. When you develop this plan, just a little thing I noticed when I was driving over there today, the way the sidewalks slope down so you can use carriages and wheelchairs, they're offset. And the problem over there too is you're waiting in traffic and you think people are gonna walk down the street, but they're walking down the sidewalk and then they cut in front of you. So I think that needs to be looked at too if you're gonna look at this whole thing. As a driver, you feel the pedestrians going to the right of you, but actually they're coming to the right and then hooking in front of you. So if we increase the traffic there, it's gonna be a problem. So just something to look at. Thank you.
All right, motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager report on plans for remaining bus shelter locations and inclusion of schedules, local history, and maps of the neighborhood with key locations or landmarks identified by residents. Second by Councilor Mercier. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. I think in making the original motion on the bus shelters, and I hope to get a report on what's left to be done there. I also had talked about the use of them as ways to sort of have maps of the actual neighborhoods, points of interest, to give a sense of identity and pride to the neighborhood. And so I would hope that residents would be involved in a kind of effort that recognize some of the points of interest that matter most to them, that there could be some kind of local history. And I've just begun discussions with the Lowell Heritage Partnership to work on a kind of history project there. But you see it over at UMass Lowell where they do have bus shelters, but they also have schedules, which you would expect to be at a bus shelter. They have maps of the campus, and so I think that would be helpful. The LRTA, I think, has begun to roll out or has looked at rolling out an app for people to figure out where their bus is and how long before the next bus comes. And so, you know, you could also look at the QRC codes, where you could use mobile devices to actually find out when the next bus is coming based upon that particular bus shelter location. But I'd appreciate a report back from the administration on this. Thank you.
All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Next motion by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager arrange for seating in front of Adult Education Center until a longer-term plan for the space can be developed. Second by Councilor Noon. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Almost every morning and every afternoon, you see all kinds of people clustered around the Adult Education Center, waiting to go into school or coming back from school, waiting to get picked up or what have you. And there's no place to sit except for a couple of benches off to the side in front of the Smith Baker Center. It's completely hot-topped over, and it's not, you know, people are sitting all over the pavement in a tiny little retaining wall. So this is just to look at, you know, being able to provide some temporary seating there in the short term, and then in the long term, developing some kind of small plan to provide seating for people so that it's a more welcoming place for the students there. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. You gotta be a little quicker. Councilor Leahy.
Sorry. And just when we developed this plan over there, I know that during the winter, they don't have any place to throw the snow, so they use it for parking and snow. So they just have to take that into consideration also. And, you know, probably when the manager speaks to the adult ed director over there, they can work out the logistics. But I do know that they, because, you know, we leave so much snow on the streets, that's where they put it, so, thank you.
All right, once again, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries. And one more motion this evening by Mayor Murphy. Request city manager report on traffic ordinance for Duane Street and consider disallowing parking on the left-hand side and making the right-hand side residential only in order to improve safety toward Chelmsford Street. Second by Councilor Mercier. Mayor Murphy.
Thank you. I met with a number of residents about a week ago at the Flanagan Housing, and this was one of the issues that had come up, that on Doane Street, as you're coming out, taking a right towards Chelmsford Street, there's a line of cars on the left-hand side that's being used by a commercial enterprise, despite having a parking lot and things to work on the cars, and it makes passing there difficult. There are a number of, there are, you know, well over 100 kids in the housing, and it's also something that there's a playground right there at the Doane Street playground. So it's a bit of a safety issue, and ask just that the traffic engineer look at it and see what our current ordinance requires and whether it needs to be tweaked at all. Thank you.
No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. That completes our agenda. Motion to adjourn by Mayor Murphy, seconded by Councilor Mercier. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say nay. The motion carries. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone.